Oh hey, didn't see you there. Happy Halloween. Happy Halloween, spooky fam. Welcome to October 31st, aka day 31 of Buzztober. We made it almost a month, but like I said, don't fret because you get 2 more bonus episodes after this. So make sure to continue looking at the channel through November 2nd, so November 1 and November 2. But today we have a scary story that I'm gonna read for you guys. I am actually sick. If I seem a little off, I'm not doing well. I put makeup on just because I was like, you gotta do something to feel like you have energy today. But I don't have very much, I'll be honest with you. Nothing serious, just like this dumb ear infection, you know, crazy. So today I'm just drinking some pumpkin coffee that I made myself with a little bit of Toll House brown sugar or brown butter chocolate chip cookie dough, cold foam on top. Chef's kiss. If you haven't tried that creamer yet, absolutely give it a try. I've seen it everywhere, so I'm sure wherever you usually buy your creamer, it's going to be there. But okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. I'm just gonna read one story today. So let's go ahead and dive in. I was awoken from a less than desirable night's sleep. You know, the kind when you wake up and no matter the hour or how long your eyes have been shut, you feel emotional, anxious, and exhausted. The deadly cocktail of feelings that just makes you wish you could do nothing more but start it all over and go back to sleep. If you're not someone who suffers from insomnia, what I'm describing can be difficult to imagine. I know in Fight Club it's explained as you're never fully awake and you're never fully asleep. But for me, it's more like every time I wake up in the morning, whether it's to an alarm or naturally, I feel like I need more sleep. And before you roll your eyes, I recognize everyone is tired first thing in the morning. So let me explain a little bit more. No amount of caffeine helps it. All that does is feels like it's trying to shake your brain awake, but can't because it's focusing on other things like work, for example. You feel like you're outside of your body, watching your life in front of you. The craziest part is when you're talking and you don't know where the words are coming from half the time, but you're thankful because at least something is making you form actual sentences to appear normal. Then for a brief hour or two during the day, you feel not completely exhausted. But once you realize you feel not exhausted, you start to feel tired again. Then when the time comes once again that night, one of 2 things will happen. 1, you can't fall asleep until you do something that exhausts your eyes enough that you slip into unconsciousness. Or 2, you do fall asleep and wake up frequently throughout the night until you get to the point where you might as well just get up because trying to fall back asleep will make you feel even less rested, if that's possible. But everyone experiences things in different ways, so maybe that's just my experience. It's a personal hell at times, but all you can do is try everything and anything to get through it and silence the noise of exhaustion as much as humanly possible. Tonight was one of those nights where I didn't have as hard of a time falling asleep, but I woke up in the middle of the night to an episode of the show I fell asleep to illuminating the room. I fall asleep to the TV every night, and no, it doesn't make the insomnia worse, so spare me the lecture. It's the only thing that quiets my mind to even attempt whatever version of sleep I am able to get. I typically fall asleep watching something I've seen every episode of multiple times. I'm a big TV buff and love having even the sound of the TV on sometimes. I often rewatch things I've already seen because not only does having noise on help a lot with quieting my thoughts, it's also comforting for some reason to watch something knowing how it's going to end. Can't do that with anything else in life, so I'll take this disillusionment to help cope with any kind of unwanted actual reality. This happens from time to time with this type of insomnia. The one where I wake up multiple times, that the show I was watching is still playing. Sometimes I just watch the episode that's playing until I fall back asleep. But more often than not, I just try and roll over immediately and fall back asleep as quickly as possible. But this night, I realized the episode of Family Guy that was playing was one I didn't remember watching before. I started actually paying attention to it and actually became kind of hypnotized into the story. In this episode, Stewie and Brian were on one of their typical adventures like usual. But instead of being off on the road to Rhode Island, they were transporting in and out of a large mirror in Stewie's room. At first, everything seemed normal, like a typical episode, and I kept waiting for something to make me laugh. But instead of humor, all I could feel was unsettled. The place they transported to in the mirror was just black, dark, empty, and silent. It made me uncomfortable. For a while, no one said a word during the scene, but somehow the dark place of nothingness that they were in grew darker somehow, and the camera panned away from Brian and Stewie, where all you could see was the unbelievable, bleak darkness. After what felt like several minutes of silence and darkness, I realized then how dark and undeniably silent my bedroom was becoming. I couldn't see my own hands, my own body, nothing else in the room. It made zero sense how the glow from the TV couldn't emit anything, not even a shadow in the room. Nothing made sense. I tried to move my limbs, but couldn't tell if I was actually moving or not. That made me afraid to even try because I couldn't see the bed or the floor to know how close I was to the ground, or rather, how far away. The silence was deafening, yet somehow having absolutely no sound was more terrifying than any horrifying noise I'd ever heard. It hit me slowly and then all at once, how absolutely horrified I was by all of this, and I began to scream. I can't explain why, but I think because I was afraid to move and had no sense of where anything was in the room, so quickly fight or flight turned into sit and scream. But I couldn't hear anything. I could feel the pain of my vocal cords pulsing and thrashing, trying to create any sort of noise, but absolute silence was all that remained, or beyond silence somehow. I wouldn't even know what to call that. As I could feel myself aching to create any kind of noise or see anything, the camera on my once beloved cartoon zooms back again to where it's right behind Stewie and Brian's heads. And right as the camera stays in place, slowly but in perfect synchronization, they turn their heads as slowly as possible to the point where both of their faces were turned to an unnatural 180 degrees. Their faces were where the back of their heads should be, and just as they stopped completely, their eyes went from straight ahead to looking directly up. And Stewie eerily pointed one finger upward. My eyes followed in suit, and as I slowly peered up to look at the ceiling, I saw a dark figure staring back down at me. It placed one bony finger to its lips and dropped down, falling towards me, and all at once, color and sound came flooding back into the room, suffocating me in pure fear and terror. I shut my eyes so quickly and curled into the fetal position, and when I opened my eyes again, everything was back to normal. There was a glow from the TV light, with the Netflix asking me if I was still there. No sign of anything off or weird, so I could clearly see and hear slight sounds again. Normal ones you'd hear in the middle of the night. The light spinning from the fan circulating the air in the room, the drip from the shower head that needs to get fixed, my racing heart beating so hard in my chest I could feel it in my ears. But I was fine. A logical person would assume they fell asleep, but when you aren't a good sleeper, you're very aware of the difference between waking up and simply keeping your eyes shut for hours on end. There was no way I had fallen asleep. What the hell was going on? I barely slept a wink after that, maybe about an hour altogether. But when I woke up the next day, I was thankful for a new day. I tried to Google about the episode the next day to see who on Reddit had a couple of hits off a blunt and came up with an existential meaning behind the episode. And never in my life has this happened, but there was absolutely nothing about the episode anywhere. No link, no article, no Reddit thread, nothing regarding the episode I saw. I felt unnerved and confused. Then after work that day, I tried to look up the episode itself on Netflix, and once again, nothing. I rewatched many episodes just to make sure it wasn't just some weird trippy scene Seth Meyers in a high state created to freak you out a little and keep you on your toes, so the viewer would be relieved when the next punchline arrived. But never saw the haunting scene, even after hours of watching episodes. The whole rest of the night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Now one more thing added to my brain that I was frustrated with myself about. You can't even figure out if this was all even real? What's wrong with you? How hard could it be to research a damn Family Guy episode? I'm sure if you looked a little harder, you'd probably find it if you could read show descriptions a little faster. Maybe if you studied harder in school, your brain would be more stimulated to want to learn versus getting lazy and consuming another episode of reality TV trash because your brain just wants a break. Your life and job aren't even that hard. You aren't an engineer or a doctor. You should work your brain harder like others do, and you'd be happier, more financially secure, more successful. But here you are, ready to eat another dinner that's not going to help you lose weight, watch an hour's worth of TikToks that won't do anything to make you smarter, and fall asleep to TV when most people that are normal can just actually fall asleep on their own. I can't even do normal functions the way I should. But here we are, me doing every one of these things, consumed by my own ignorance and mediocrity. But at least when I try to go to sleep, I can try and silence this negative noise for at least a little while. My own little version of peace, or really of silence and darkness. The next night, as I attempted my normal routine, turning on the entertainment to turn off the thoughts. It's something I've struggled with as long as I can remember. Every time it gets dark outside and I'm allowing myself to vulnerably drift into slumber, I am interrupted with past memories, regrets, and moments where I've utterly fucked up. But the second I have a sense of comfort and familiarity in something like a show, the characters and the plots and the laugh tracks or sound effects silence the noise of my all-consuming thoughts. After being a little spooked, to say the least, by Family Guy, I turned on Friends instead and drifted into sleep. As usual, I woke up in the middle of the night to the TV still on. I was once again right in the middle of an episode. I felt a sense of comfort that it was on, and I heard the familiar, iconic theme song playing. When this all happens, I feel safe. Almost like not alone, and that the characters in the show are there to protect me while I sleep. I couldn't figure out what episode it was, so I began to start to pay attention to it. They were all sitting in the living room of what was Phoebe and Rachel's apartment at the time. And at first, there were lighthearted jokes taking place. They brought up how no one knew Chandler's job title, which made me laugh a little. Then it turned into them throwing a dig at Joey for the poor decision of choosing his career as an actor. I didn't really laugh at that one. Sometimes I get sensitive, and that felt harsh. Then there was a dig at Monica formerly being overweight, and how it'll probably happen again if she doesn't stress about every calorie she consumes. And the laugh track played, but it didn't feel funny, not even in the slightest. And then it turned into insults and painful comments about each other, of their character, personalities, career choices, relationship mistakes, their intelligence. And the laugh track became so loud I had to cover my ears. But the laughs went from lighthearted to maniacal, and it felt like the haunting sounding laugh track was the surround sound of my bedroom. I began to panic, looking for the remote, when all of a sudden, I noticed they all stopped talking. The laugh track stopped, and every single character was staring directly at me. I was awestruck and couldn't move. Not only that, but somehow the all-consuming darkness from the night before returned, and I had zero sense of where anything in the room was. Finally, the silence was broken, and the camera zoomed in eerily slowly to Monica's face, which didn't move, blink, or appear to be breathing. And while I felt like her gorgeous blue eyes were what felt like they were piercing my soul, she opened her mouth and said, "Run." And the TV went to black. My heart nearly stopped. I couldn't scream, I couldn't see. Running seemed like the worst option. So I tried to feel around and couldn't feel anything. Not my bed, the nightstand, nothing. It was as if I was floating completely alone in space. As I was screaming silent sobs, I realized I wasn't alone. I felt the bony finger tap my shoulder, and I turned around to see what was the dark figure from the night before. How was it possible that my eyes couldn't see anything but this? None of this made sense. I couldn't move and could barely breathe. And all of a sudden, the TV turned on, and instead of feeling relief, all I could feel was fear and utterly disturbed. All of my beloved characters were laughing at me, pointing at me, calling me every name and insult under the sun. The laugh track so loud again and sinister, I felt like my eardrums were going to explode. The only advantage I had was that the TV finally exuded some light, and for a moment I felt brave and ran out of bed. I turned back to see the black figure standing directly next to me, staring at me saying, "Even if you can find the light, you won't be able to turn it on." And I said, "Watch me," and I flipped on the light. As I did, everything became normal and felt almost better than before. No demons, no laughing, no painful reminders. And I actually felt like I could surprisingly fall asleep. And after I calmed down a little, I actually felt safe enough to turn off the TV and the light and go to sleep. As someone who has always felt like they were left in the darkest parts of my thoughts when it comes to past decisions, and while circumstances took place, I realize now that fear isn't what's waiting for you to notice it in the dark. It's being trapped in your own thoughts, telling yourself these stories of why everything that has gone wrong in your life has always been your fault. But that's all they are. They're stories. They're not real. The fear of silence and darkness will always be there, unless you allow yourself to accept every decision you've made as just that. Nothing more than taking a right versus a left, or saying yes versus no. And that there's no way to know why every decision or situation ends up the way it's going to. That's life. It's meant to be lived, explored, and experienced, not filled with regret, guilt, or fear. Once we can accept that everything that happens is solely to get to the next step or experience, which helps us actually live, then we will no longer be afraid to face the dark. Okay, so you may have noticed I didn't say where this was posted or who the author was, and that's because I wrote that. And in terms of the reference to Friends on it, I wrote this before the passing of Matthew Perry, and please know that in no way, shape, or form was I trying to do anything insulting in that realm to him. He was obviously a big part of all of us in terms of the show we watched growing up, or the show that brings us a lot of comfort now. So rest in peace, Matthew Perry, and I'm so sorry. I still can't believe he's gone. It's wild. But yes, I wrote that. So it's funny because I've showed a couple people that story before, and some of them are like, is that how you think? And I'm like, oh, whoops, yep, that's what it's like inside my brain. So in reality, obviously that story's fake. Like, I've never had like a dark figure floating above me and a bony finger pointing at me, and I never saw like a fake Family Guy episode or a fake Friends episode or anything like that. What inspired this story was one time I had a weird nightmare about an episode of Family Guy I was watching, but it wasn't like that scary. It was more like a show that just, or an episode that had never existed before. So that's what inspired me to write this. But the parts that talk a lot about insomnia, like I have pretty crazy insomnia, always have, and the parts that talk about like mental health, those are real. So anyway, hopefully if you are someone that also struggles a bit with mental health or insomnia or anything like that, just know you are not alone. And sometimes it just feels better to write down a story or write down your thoughts just to kind of get it out. But so that was the point of me writing that story, something mixed with one of my passions, which is scary stuff, as well as writing, and additionally to kind of therapeutically get some of those thoughts out of my head. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Happy Halloween to you. I hope you have the best Halloween ever. And until next time, you guys, don't worry, don't forget about the 2 bonus episodes. There's 2 more coming out. So until tomorrow, cheers to you guys, stay buzzed and stay spooky. Bye.